On my daughter's 10th birthday, I found out the whole family flew to Miami without saying a word. I commented, "You all left town today?" My dad replied, "Didn't feel like babysitting a problem child." I wrote back, "Perfect, because your retirement fund just lost its sponsor." They laughed it off. 9 days later, their group chat was on fire. And my dad was begging me to talk. I'd been watching the clock since 6 a.m. trying to make it special. Ellie turned 10 that day. Double digits. She'd been talking about it since summer, counting down like it was Christmas. I blew up 30 balloons the night before and stuck them to the ceiling with tape that didn't hold very well. By morning, half of them were sagging toward the floor, but she didn't care. She woke up and screamed like she won the lottery. She ran down the hall with her hair all over the place, yelling, "I'm 10. She hugged me so tight I almost dropped the pancakes. There was no party, not a real one. Just me and her like it's always been. But I had decorated the kitchen, set out confetti, and made a little scavenger hunt that led her around the house until she found her gift. A pink cruiser bike with a white basket, streamers on the handlebars, and a bell that she wouldn't stop ringing for the next hour. She cried when she saw it. She made little party hats for everyone. I'm not kidding. She used glitter paper, glued on stickers, and wrote Grandma, Grandpa, Auntie Bree, and Mom in her crooked handwriting. She even taped toothpicks to them so they'd stick up. She laid them out carefully on the table so sure they'd come by at some point. "Do you think they'll get here before cake?" she asked, like it was just a matter of time. Like she believed in them more than I ever could. I checked my phone every 10 minutes, pretending I wasn't. No texts. Nothing in the family group chat. I'd posted pictures of Ellie's morning, her opening presents, riding the bike, making silly faces. Nothing. Not even a thumbs up. Not even from Bree, who normally reacts to everything I post like it's her job. By noon I gave up hoping. I went to Instagram not because I suspected anything. Just muscle memory. I tapped through stories while Ellie chalked the sidewalk with a giant, "Happy day to me." That's when I saw it. A boomerang of my sister at the airport with a drink in her hand. Then a group photo. My mom, my dad, Bree, her kids, even Aunt Marla. All standing in front of a "Welcome to Miami" mural. Everyone smiling, throwing peace signs. They were already there. I kept watching. There were palm trees, beach chairs, a lunch spread with lobster tails and margaritas. Caption, "Family trip. First time all together in years." I stared at it so long my screen dimmed. Not one of them had said a word to me. Not a single mention. Ellie's 10th birthday and they'd flown out of state that morning. I left a comment under Bree's story. "You all left town today?" No one replied right away. I waited. Fed Ellie lunch. Cut the cake, just the two of us. She asked if we should wait to do the candles. I told her no and we lit them anyway. An hour later my dad wrote in the group chat, "Didn't feel like babysitting a problem child." It didn't even feel real. I didn't ask what he meant. I knew exactly what he meant. They think Ellie's difficult because she's high energy, because she doesn't sit quietly in the corner like Bree's kids, because she asks a million questions and doesn't shut up about things she loves. I used to think they just didn't understand her. Now I think they just don't care. I wrote back, "Perfect. Because your retirement fund just lost its sponsor." And I meant it. Every month for the past 5 years I'd been sending them money. Not because they asked. Because I didn't want them to struggle. Medical bills, groceries, electric, whatever. My mom always said they couldn't make it without me. I believed her. They laughed it off. Bree sent one of those stupid laughing emojis. My dad said I was being dramatic. My mom replied, "Don't be like this, Amanda. We just needed a break." No one apologized. 9 days later I woke up to 22 messages. Missed calls. Voicemails. The group chat was on fire. My dad had written, "Amanda, please. Can we talk?" Because now the rent was late. The fridge was empty. And I wasn't sending anything anymore. I didn't answer right away. That wasn't some plan or strategy. I just didn't have anything left to give. For once I wasn't scrambling to smooth things over, fix what they broke, or explain why their words hurt. I just stood in the kitchen with my coffee, staring at my phone as message after message came in. 22 total. All from them. My dad started it, a short text. "Can we talk?" Then another. Then 3 missed calls. A voicemail. Then my mom jumped in. Her messages were longer, guiltier. She wrote, "We didn't mean it like that and I hope you understand the trip was already booked months ago." There was a paragraph about how expensive groceries had gotten, and how retirement didn't go as planned. A lot of vague phrases. Not one actual apology. Not one word about Ellie. The thing that struck me most was how quickly the tone changed from dismissive to desperate. 9 days ago I was the dramatic one. Now they were acting like this was all a big misunderstanding. But nothing was misunderstood. I'd been footing their bills for years. Rent, utilities, medication. They needed it and I gave it without question. Because they were family. And I thought someday they'd return the favor, not with money but with time, effort, love. Turns out they couldn't even give that to a 10-year-old on her birthday. I muted the group chat. Took Ellie out for ice cream in the middle of a school day because I could. She got bubblegum flavor with sprinkles and made the cashier laugh by telling him it was still her birthday week. She made everything feel lighter without even trying. That night, after she was asleep, I finally listened to the voicemails. My dad sounded tired. He said things had been stressful. That he didn't mean the comment about Ellie. That he was just overwhelmed and things had come out wrong. Then a pause. Then, "We're counting on you this month. We thought the deposit would hit Friday but it didn't. Can you help us out again?" My mom's voice was shakier. She said she didn't know I was still so sensitive. That the trip was a once-in-a-lifetime thing. That Bree had put it all together and insisted they go. She ended with, "You know we love you, right? Even when we don't say it right." But it wasn't about how they said it. It was about how they never showed it. The next morning, Bree texted me. She said I was being unnecessarily cold. That our parents were older now. That I knew how hard things had been for them. That cutting them off financially without warning was cruel. I didn't argue. I didn't defend myself. I just wrote back, "I didn't cut them off without warning. They warned me." She left me on read. 2 days passed. Then another message from my dad. "Please call me. Just 5 minutes." I ignored it. I wasn't trying to make a point. I was just living my life. Something I hadn't done without guilt in years. That Saturday, Ellie asked if we could take a little trip. I opened my laptop and let her pick. She chose a cabin by a lake. It had paddle boats and fire pits and hammocks. I booked it right then with the money I usually sent to cover my mom's prescriptions. I felt a small ache about that, but only for a second. Then it was gone. The morning we left, Bree posted a photo on Facebook. It was of my parents' fridge. Empty shelves, a single carton of eggs and a bottle of ketchup. The caption said, "This is what happens when you raise ungrateful children." I stared at it for a full minute. Then I closed the app, zipped up Ellie's bag and told her to grab her stuffed bear. Let them feel what I've been holding for 10 years. Let them sit in that silence, the one they made every time they skipped her recitals, ignored her birthdays, forgot her name on Christmas cards. Because this time I wasn't coming to fix it. The cabin was a little rough around the edges. Old wood paneling, squeaky screen door, mismatched dishes that looked like they came from 5 different yard sales. But to Ellie it was a dream. The second we arrived, she ran to the dock with her sneakers in one hand and her bear in the other. She pointed at the water and shouted, "This is the best vacation ever." She didn't even ask for Wi-Fi. We fished. Or tried to. She tangled the line so badly I had to cut it 3 times. We roasted marshmallows until they caught fire and turned black. We stayed up late playing board games, and on the second night we watched the stars through the skylight and she asked if the moon ever got lonely. That one hit me. That trip cost about the same as one of my mom's prescriptions. And for the first time I didn't feel bad about that. I didn't feel like I was stealing something from someone else to give to Ellie. It felt like mine to give, my time, my energy, my money, and hers to receive. Not something I needed to justify or apologize for. By the time we got back Sunday night I was lighter, calmer, ready for whatever came next. I turned on my phone and it almost overheated from the flood of notifications. Missed calls from both my parents. 8 texts from Bree. 2 voicemails. A new group chat titled Family Emergency. I didn't open any of it. Instead I helped Ellie unpack, ran her a warm bath and tucked her in early. Then I made myself a cup of tea and sat on the couch with my phone in my lap, letting the buzz and chimes come through without touching them. I just watched them build up, one after another, like a storm I'd finally decided to let pass without running for cover. Eventually I listened to the voicemails. My dad's voice was low and stiff. He said they were behind on rent. That they had no groceries. That he hated to do this, but needed a little help. Said I was being emotional and letting things get out of hand. My mom's voicemail was more dramatic. She talked about how they didn't ask to be old, and how hard it was for them to live off Social Security. She called the Miami trip a mistake. Said it wasn't what it looked like. Said they didn't realize how much Ellie was looking forward to them coming that day. Then she pivoted to saying Bree was overwhelmed too. That I was being unfair to the whole family. Not one time did she say sorry. The next morning I got an email from Ellie's school about a summer enrichment program. Robotics, music, creative writing, swim lessons. All things I couldn't have afforded before. I signed her up for everything. Then I added a trip to Yosemite in July. Ellie once told me she wanted to see a real mountain, not the kind on TV. So I made it happen. That same afternoon Bree called. I let it ring. She texted right after saying she couldn't believe what I was doing. That now mom and dad were asking her for help. That the utilities were due. That I was forcing everyone into a bad spot. I didn't even respond. She waited a few hours, then sent another message. It's just sad. All this money being wasted on one kid while the rest of the family suffers. I sat with that sentence for a long time. That's what they thought this was. Wasted. On one kid. As if the money I spent on Ellie wasn't just my right, but my joy. They didn't see it as me giving my daughter a better life. They saw it as me hoarding what should have been shared. What they'd quietly decided belonged to them just by default. That night, I bought Ellie a telescope she'd been eyeing for months. Posted a photo of her using it in the backyard on my private Facebook. Just a moment, just us. Bree must have seen it somehow because that night she messaged me again. Said it must be nice to play single mom with a trust fund. Said real families stick together. I didn't even feel angry. Just tired. Because I finally saw it clearly. None of this had ever been about love or Ellie or support. It was about control. About what they thought they were owed. About how, to them, I was never really a daughter, just a resource. And now that resource had dried up. They weren't worried about losing me. They were panicking because they lost the money. It started the same way everything else had. Quiet, a little unsettling, and then suddenly too much. April had just started and Ellie was deep into her obsession with Saturn. Every night we'd go outside and she'd try to find it with her telescope, even though it wasn't visible half the time. She'd still sit there, wrapped in a blanket, pointing at different stars like she already lived up there. I think she liked the quiet as much as I did. I'd gotten used to checking my phone only once or twice a day. No alerts from the group chat anymore. I hadn't blocked everyone yet, but I'd stopped pretending I was interested in what any of them had to say. Until the school called. It was the front office secretary. She was friendly, but her tone changed once she confirmed who I was. Someone had called the school claiming to be Ellie's grandmother. Said she was coming to pick her up early for a surprise lunch. Gave Ellie's full name, her teacher's name, even mentioned that she liked pizza. The only thing that stopped the secretary from releasing her was that Ellie wasn't listed for pickup by anyone but me and two close friends I'd put down in case of emergency. They didn't say it, but I could tell it shook them too. Someone outside of the approved list trying to extract a child without notifying the parent? They flagged it and said they'd be notifying the district. Tagged them. Then I sat there for 5 minutes staring at my coffee, feeling this weird heat in my chest. They'd actually tried it. They crossed a line I didn't think they ever would. Not physically, but emotionally. Trying to insert themselves into my daughter's life after humiliating her and then pretending it was all just a misunderstanding. I drove to the school that afternoon, asked to tighten the pickup list. No one but me. I gave them new emergency contacts, changed passwords, and signed a form that would flag any future attempts by extended family. When I left, I sat in my car, locked the doors, and exhaled so slowly it felt like I'd been holding that breath since Ellie was born. Later that night, I got the voicemail. My mom. Trying to sound wounded. She said she heard I'd blocked them from picking Ellie up. That it wasn't an abduction, and no one was trying to steal her. That she just wanted to surprise her. She's our granddaughter too, Amanda. This isn't fair. No apology. No acknowledgement of what they did on Ellie's birthday. Just her usual trick. Making me out to be the one overreacting so she wouldn't have to feel bad. I blocked her number. And I thought that would be the end of it. But then, a week later, I got something in the mail. A real envelope. Thick paper. Legal letterhead. It was from a law office I didn't recognize. My first thought was medical debt or insurance. But when I opened it, I actually laughed. They were trying to pull something I never saw coming. The letter explained, carefully, vaguely, that I had a documented history of ongoing financial contribution to my parents, which had created a pattern of mutual understanding. And that based on previous support, I had been named as a financial proxy in an older estate plan they'd apparently drawn up years ago. Now they wanted to reaffirm the terms, and the lawyer suggested a brief conversation to discuss how to proceed. They were trying to make it legal. To use my past generosity as leverage. To trap me in it. I called the lawyer. Told him who I was. He sounded uncomfortable immediately. I asked if my parents had told him why I'd stopped sending money. He said they hadn't offered much detail, only that I was their primary support system. I told him I was no longer anything of the sort. That this was a manipulation. He didn't argue. Just said he'd update the file. And that's when something shifted for me. All those years I felt guilty. Like I owed them for things that were never actually given. Like helping them with some invisible deal I signed as a kid and couldn't break. But when they pulled a lawyer into it, when they tried to wrap my guilt in paperwork, I didn't feel guilty anymore. I felt angry. Not the kind that burns quick and fades. The cold kind. The kind that makes things clear. They weren't just trying to guilt me. They were trying to own me. Meanwhile, Ellie was thriving. She was signed up for summer programs, practicing basic coding with her little robot from the library, and had a notebook full of space facts she planned to read me before bed every night. She was curious, loud, wild, and exactly who she was meant to be. And I had no intention of letting anyone try to manage her into being easier. The next week I took a photo of her next to the telescope, posted it on my friends only story, captioned it. She asked me how far Saturn is. I told her not as far as some people pretend love can stretch. An hour later, Bree sent a new message. A long one. About how I was making this harder than it needed to be. How our parents were falling apart, and I'd made my point, but maybe now it was time to be the bigger person. I didn't answer. I just blocked her too, because they could all fall apart if they wanted to. I wasn't the glue anymore. By summer, it felt like I was living in a different universe from them. My days were full in a way they never had been before. Not loud or flashy, just full. Allie and I had routines that belonged only to us now. Saturday mornings at the library. Pancakes on Sundays. Weeknights where we'd sit on the floor and plan imaginary trips with old maps and sticky notes. I wasn't rushing through life anymore, always calculating what I could afford to send, what expense I could delay for myself so someone else wouldn't be uncomfortable. And I only knew what leaked out. A cousin mentioned my parents' AC had broken and they were arguing with the landlord instead of just paying for the repair like they used to. A neighbor told me my mom was asking around about cheaper grocery stores. Someone else said Bree's kids were suddenly transferring schools. Nothing catastrophic. Just inconvenient. Just uncomfortable. The kind of discomfort I'd been quietly absorbing for years. Allie and I went to Yosemite in July. She kept stopping on the trail to look at rocks like they were museum exhibits. She said the mountains felt older than everything and asked if they remembered things. I took a picture of her holding a weird jagged stone like it was gold. We printed it when we got home and taped it to the fridge. Next to it went a postcard we mailed to ourselves. That became our thing after that birthday. Wherever we went, we sent ourselves proof we were there. The silence from my family stretched on until August. That's when Bree showed up at my door. No warning. No text. Just her standing there with a bag of old books and a box of DVDs like she was dropping off donations. Allie was inside and I stepped out onto the porch and closed the door behind me without even thinking about it. Bree talked fast. About how she'd found these things cleaning out her garage. About how Ellie might like them. About how Mom wasn't sleeping well. About how Dad had been really quiet lately. She said it all like she was reporting the weather. Then she shifted. She said the family felt broken. That things had gone too far. That maybe I'd made my point and it was time to stop holding grudges. She said it was hurting everyone. That Mom cried a lot. That Dad felt ashamed having to ask other people for help. I told her I wasn't holding a grudge. I was just not participating anymore. She didn't like that answer. He said I was being stubborn. That Ellie was getting spoiled. That all these trips and activities were unnecessary. That I was rubbing it in. That it wasn't fair for one child to get so much while the rest of the family struggled. I realized then she wasn't there as a sister. He was there as a messenger. A negotiator. She wasn't asking me to reconnect. She was asking me to resume payments. Before she left, she said something she clearly thought would land. It's really sad, Amanda. Destroying a family over one birthday. I didn't correct her. I didn't explain. I just told her to take the box with her. Because it wasn't about the birthday. It was about what the birthday exposed. That they could leave without a word. That they could mock my child. That they could laugh when I finally said no. That the only thing tying us together had been money, and the second it disappeared, so did whatever version of love they claimed to have. September came and Ellie and I took a train trip. He wanted to ride one just to see what it felt like. We watched the scenery blur past and shared snacks, and she leaned her head on my shoulder and said this had been the best year of her life. I didn't post about it publicly. I didn't need to. I knew they'd hear about it anyway. They always did. Every trip, every class, every small upgrade in our life irritated them more than silence ever could. They watched from a distance, counted what I spent, measured what they lost. And for the first time I didn't feel the pull to fix it. It's been almost a year now. Ellie turned 11 last week. This time there were no glitter party hats waiting for people who wouldn't show. No second-guessing what to tell her when the doorbell didn't ring. No quiet checking of my phone every hour hoping someone from the family would remember or pretend to care. Just me and her, and a plan she helped make herself. We spent the day at a planetarium 2 hours away. She'd been talking about it for months. Walked through the exhibits like she owned the place, asked every volunteer about black holes, galaxies, and the weight of Saturn's rings. She took a picture with a giant inflatable astronaut and picked out a plush moon at the gift shop that she's now sleeping with. On the way home she looked out the window and said, "It was perfect." That was all I needed to hear. There wasn't a single message from my parents. Not from Bree either. Not even one of those vague last-minute, "hope you had a nice day," texts that usually followed the silence. their way of pretending it was all a harmless oversight. I guess they finally realized I wasn't interested in crumbs anymore. But they're still watching. I know that much. Every once in a while I get tagged in something random by an extended cousin or a family friend I never got around to unfollowing. Little things. Brie posting a quote about bridges burned by pride, or my mom commenting on a memory photo with some poetic nonsense like, when families still held each other close. I even saw a post once, a blurry scan of a utility bill, with the caption, trying to survive in a world that forgot how to care. It's theatrical. Like they've cast themselves in a tragedy that never happened. And that's what finally opened my eyes. I used to think cutting them off was this massive life-altering decision. Like I had to be 100% sure before I did it. Like I needed a clean reason, proof that I wasn't just being emotional. But the truth is, when I finally stopped giving, not just money but access, attention, explanations, they didn't collapse. They performed. They just shifted into guilt mode. Tried to keep their grip on me through shame, not love. They thought silence was my move and theirs was the counter. But the silence was just the end of the game. And now, with that silence stretching out across nearly a year, I've come to this strange, peaceful truth. They were never really family. They were just people I happened to be related to, people who taught me that love was transactional, and that approval had to be earned with sacrifice. The only reason they kept me around was because I gave them something. And once I stopped, they disappeared. No one fought to fix anything. No one showed up. They didn't send a card to Ellie or try to rebuild what they shattered. They only wanted the money, the help, the control. And when I stopped letting them take those things, they didn't know how to exist in my life anymore. Ellie, on the other hand, has never looked more alive. She's building solar system models, asking about enrolling in a coding camp, planning our next road trip with a paper map she keeps folded in her backpack. Every week she writes little missions for us to complete. Stargazing, trying a food we've never eaten, learning a fact about a new country. She's not distracted by the absence of people who never really saw her. And I'm not either. Sometimes I think about how long I kept trying. How I stretched myself thin to keep a version of peace that only worked for them. How I twisted myself into the good daughter role, even when it cost me sleep, time, money, and pieces of myself I'll never get back. They say money changes people. But I don't think that's true. I think money reveals them. And when the money ran out, what was left behind wasn't family. It was rot. Rot dressed up in guilt and nostalgia. In fake laughter and crocodile tears. In posts about what used to be, written by people who didn't show up when it counted. But I showed up. For Ellie. For myself. Finally. And I'll never go back.